I use a lot of fragrances throughout the course of a month, but my current favorite fragrances are the ones I'm enjoying a bit more than the rest. Welcome. Before I get started, please make sure you drop a like on this video if you love smelling good, and also consider subscribing if you're brand new here. So I always rotate my way through the fragrances that I think are pretty much perfect for everyday use. And part of that rotation is usually something from the YSL line. But with the exception of the new Y Ice Cologne, I've been giving that line a bit of a break lately. And instead reaching for other fragrances I feel are also versatile, but with a completely different vibe. Before I get to those, I want to talk about one of my most used fragrances right now. This is the new Jean Paul Gaultier Scanner pour Homme Elixir, and this is one of the fragrances I've been having a really hard time to stay away from. This is intensely fruity with a big, loud and intense dose of sweet cherry. You also get a prominent dose of vanilla, making the whole thing, at least to my nose, even more addictive, even more attractive, and the whole thing is incredibly mass appealing. And when it goes into the drawdown, you get what I think is a gorgeous amber warmth. You still have a bit of that sweet cherry, the whole thing is still quite vanillic, but also gorgeously intensely ambery. This is when I want a really sexy vibe all around me. And before you ask, yes, I've done Armani Stronger With You Powerfully versus Scanner Elixir comparison. I'm gonna link to that video somewhere up here and in the description below. I've actually put quite a dent to Powerfully as well. This is definitely one of my current favorites and a fragrance I've been reaching for quite a bit lately. So next up, one of the fragrances that has sort of taken on the role as one of my everyday fragrances. And here's the thing, I think it's quite rare nowadays, at least for like the last couple of years, to see a fresher with something new to it, but this is definitely a fresh scent I feel has quite a bit of uniqueness. I don't even need to spray this, the whole bottle oozes, that's how intense this thing is. So this is basically all about quite an intense dose of marine freshness. It has an intense sort of a saltiness to it as well, together with quite a prominent spicy freshness. Its intense marine freshness, spicy freshness, and sort of a salty freshness is balanced up in the dry down by a really nice and smooth dose of woodiness. I think what makes this so unique is probably its use of seaweed, giving the whole thing quite a twist when it comes to its marine freshness and how that seaweed is combined with a bit of vetiver and oak moss. And I mean, the very noticeable sort of a saltiness to the whole thing definitely makes this stand out as well. Issey miyake Le Sel de Issey, this is the eau de toilette, is basically a gorgeous mix of freshness and woodiness. The performance of this thing is really good and actually surprised me, and this has been one of my go-tos for everyday use. So it really doesn't matter what part of the year it is, I always, every single month, once in a while, reach for something with leather in it. Sometimes it's something that is intensely leathery, and sometimes it's a fragrance that satisfies my craving for leather, but in a more versatile and definitely more mass appealing way. And one of those that I reach for when I want leather done in a more versatile and mass appealing way has been Carolina Herrera Bad Boy Elixir. But lately more this instead of Bad Boy Elixir. But I gotta say, Azzaro Forever Wanted Elixir definitely, without a single doubt, has similarities to Bad Boy Elixir. So this is intensely fruity right away with a very prominent dose of sweetness and raspberry. And right behind that raspberry, you have a really nice dose of aromatic brightness and freshness from lavender and quite a smooth dose of leather. I think the combo of lavender and leather is almost always a good thing, and here you get that combo together with quite a prominent dose of fruitiness and sweetness. And to my nose, Azzaro Forever Wanted Elixir could almost be sort of a simplified, described as a mix of Carolina Herrera Bad Boy Elixir and the epic Tom Ford Tuscan leather. This has been satisfying my craving for leather, and when I want leather done in a more versatile and easier to wear way. And so far, when I've been wearing this while being out and about, at least for like the first couple of hours, this thing definitely seems to get compliments. So if you're a subscriber, then you probably know that I absolutely love the Prada L'Homme line, and that I do think the OG L'Homme is great for everyday use. And Prada L'Homme Low could almost be described as the OG, but with a twist to it. And I do think that for most, having both of these are actually redundant, but if you are a bit like me, that you absolutely love powdery fresh scents, then it makes sense to also have L'Homme Low. L'Homme Low is also a mix of freshness, powderiness with a bit of woodiness, but it could in a way be described as a version of the original L'Homme with a less nuanced kind of sort of a floral freshness and with a bit of a twist to its freshness and powderiness. That twist in freshness and the sort of slimmed down or minimalistic take is really nice. And I've been giving the OG L'Homme a bit of a break lately and instead going for L'Homme Low. So I decided to buy this late last year, and I didn't really buy it because it's a super complex or super rich kind of scent in any way, but I bought it because I actually find it to be quite nuanced in its sort of simplicity. And the other reason is because this also brings something quite new to my collection. And I mean, you get an intense dose of vanilla. That vanilla definitely has a bit of sweetness to it. On top of that, you also get an additional dose of sweetness from sugar. So there's definitely almost sort of a slightly powdery, definitely sugary kind of sweetness to the whole thing. And this combo of vanilla and sugar is something I feel is really nice, but that's not the main reason why I bought it. This has quite a unique kind of smokiness to it, and it's really that combination of its smokiness together with the vanilla and its sweetness that made me buy it. I do not feel Bois Talisman is a complex scent. However, I do feel there's quite a bit of nuance to the few things that are in here. So moving on to what is definitely one of my absolute favorites right now, and this thing has grown on me a lot in a very short time. So Phantom in Red is basically an intensely ambery scent, so you get a gorgeous dose of amber warmth and shine, but it's got a really nice contrast to it thanks to a dose of lavender. So you get a bit of amber warmth and shine together with a really nice dose of aromatic freshness and brightness, and the whole thing is definitely a bit spicy, a bit sweet and softly woody. And very simplified, I do think Phantom Red could almost be described like if you would take a slimmed down version of Rabanne 1 million Royal and add a dash of 1 million Elixir to it, and then give the whole thing a bit of a twist. This has grown on me so fast. I think it's so good, so sexy, and it might actually be one of my favorites in the line. It's definitely time for me to do a proper comparison of all the ones in the Phantom line, so make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss out on that one. So I always, every single month, make sure I revisit sort of older fragrances, especially bangers like this, because I sometimes find that I sort of forget about the older great fragrances in my collection when I focus on the new ones. So making sure that I include older bangers in my rotation is essential. And this is something a lot of you probably recognize, the epic Armani Code Profumo. I mean, this is intensely ambery, intensely vanillic with quite a prominent spicy kick. It does have what I think is that signature Armani Code DNA with vanilla and an aromatic side. So you get a bit of aromatic freshness and brightness, and the whole thing is definitely a bit sweet and softly leathery. I mean, I don't even need to spray this thing on. The whole bottle oozes in this incredibly sexy and absolutely stunning way. Armani Code Profumo is so good. I bought this and a backup bottle of it, and pretty much every single time I spray it on, I end up getting a compliment. And it's definitely one of the fragrances I've been reaching for quite a bit lately. Let me know if you have Code Profumo in your collection and what you think of it. So next up we have one of my recent blind buys, and it's from a brand I really have not bought that many fragrances from, and the last one in this line that I bought a fragrance of was actually the OG. I have no idea how many flankers there are in this line nowadays, but I decided to blind buy this and was so surprised on how different it is if you compare it to the OG. So the original is so unique with its intense floral side together with quite a nuanced dose of woodiness and spiciness. I still feel that what Moschino did with the OG Toy Boy is something quite unique. The OG is definitely a bit polarizing, but it's also, without a single doubt, definitely one of the most unique scents released the last few years, and it's a masculine rose-focused scent for men that turn heads. Toy Boy 2 moves away from the florals of the original and instead into something that could almost be described as, in a way, gourmand with a bit of coffee. Take that cup of coffee and sprinkle on some cardamom and a bit of nutmeg. So you basically have this sort of a spiced up cup of coffee, and then what you need to do is to add a prominent dose of woodiness to that. So you basically have this spicy cup of coffee that's quite intensely woody with the kind of woodiness that I feel is quite nuanced, and something in the dry down almost gives off this sort of a milky feel. So in a way, Toy Boy 2 could almost be described like a cup of coffee with a bit of a milk to it without it being actually something milky. This is something I've been reaching for quite a bit lately, and I was really surprised in a good way on how different this one is if you compare it to the original. So moving on to Mercedes-Benz Club Black, the Eau de Parfum, and this basically takes most of the OG but gives it a bit of a twist. I do find the newer Eau de Parfum and the OG to be quite similar, but I do think the biggest twist is that this doesn't have the quite noticeable sort of a smokiness that the OG has, but it's still an amber warm vanilla that is incredibly smooth and balsamic. And I also feel that if you love ambery warm scents with quite a prominent dose of vanilla, then this is definitely something that is quite hard to go wrong with. And while the OG Club Black was a very likable kind of scent, this, without the original smokiness, is even more mass appealing. I do not feel this is an overly complex or super nuanced kind of scent, but I do feel it stands out with its ambery warm vanilla and how incredibly smooth the whole thing is. And I've been enjoying Club Black Eau de Parfum quite a bit lately. So I believe I said the same thing about this the last time I talked about it, which was probably a couple of months ago, but I feel it's even better now than before. So this is definitely something I feel you should give some time to let it sort of smoothen up and develop to become a lot better. And I know I'm gonna butcher this. This is Paris Corner Rifaaqat, and it's basically an amber warm vanilla with a prominent spicy kick. There's a bit of soft woodiness to it as well, and this thing is definitely, at least to my nose, quite sweet. So Rifaaqat is heavily inspired by YSL Baby Cat, and while I don't think they are exactly the same, I do feel Rifaaqat after a few months is an absolutely fantastic scent on its own. The whole thing has softened up in a really nice way. It's a lot rounder, fuller, and definitely a lot smoother. So moving on to another one that has been part of my sort of a rotation for everyday use, and this basically takes a bit of that unique signature Kenzo Homme Marin freshness and blends it with a prominent dose of what I think quite a nuanced dose of woodiness. So it's basically a combination of freshness and woodiness. So in that sense, it does have similarities to the other ones in the line. However, the biggest twist to Kenzo Homme Santal Marin is that this has quite a prominent dose of lavender. So what you're getting here is basically Kenzo's unique marine freshness together with quite a prominent but smooth dose of woodiness, and the whole thing has a really nice dose of aromatic brightness and freshness thanks to lavender, and it's also softly powdery. I think Santal Marin is a great choice as an everyday fragrance, and it's definitely a head turner. So the OG Kilian Angel Share is so good, it's one of my fragrances for life, and this basically tones down the original's intense sweetness and booziness and introduces an intense, very prominent, but also very smooth and incredibly nuanced dose of freshness. This is basically a combination of an intense, but at the same time very smooth and nuanced kind of freshness that sits on top of a very creamy and nuanced dose of woodiness. It does have a bit of the sweetness and a bit of the booziness from the OG, but in a blend that is definitely more versatile and definitely a lot more sort of well balanced. Kilian Angel Share on the rocks, and the dent is getting bigger by the month. So there you go, these are some of my current favorites, and I was just thinking, okay, so what am I going to spray on today? And I was going to reach for, once again, Phantom in Red or Scanner Elixir. However, I'm actually gonna go with La Selle de Issey Miyake, and I wanna know, do you have any fragrances in your collection that you've been reaching for a bit more than the rest lately? And make sure you check out my other videos as well.